So it looks like Reform are gaining traction, with one poll putting them ahead of the Tories. Meanwhile, Labour are being accused of hiding hidden tax rises. And politics and football, do they mix? We have John Swinney, Stephen Flynn, and even Alex Salmond in Germany to watch the game. Welcome to Planet Holyrood. I'm joined today by Hannah Rodger and Ben Borland.
It's important we look at the facts. Politics has to be about service.
A modern form of national service.
The outcome, that's for the voters to decide.
So Farage is now claiming that he's going to be the opposition to Labour, and the Tories. Is that them heading to be the third party in Westminster, Ben?
I don't think so. I don't think the number of votes that Reform are going to get is going to translate into many MPs. I think from where they were a few weeks ago, it is an astonishing kind of surge in support. What can it continue? How much bigger can it go? I mean, it looks to me as though Farage is going to probably get in Clacton. I've seen predictions saying they might now get as many as 4 MPs, and clearly they're going to get millions of votes, particularly in England. But I mean, I think they will get they'll get significant support in Scotland as well. Nothing like the same percentage-wise. Yeah, I think so. I think they might, along the same sort of level as. I'd certainly put them on a par with Alba. They're maybe just behind Greens.
I mean, they're polling more, but I think they're polling more than Alba, Hannah, to be honest. That's the...
I'm just thinking about, the Sunday Mail last week. We had a story where basically Reform and certainly in some areas, were struggling to even get the support of their own supporters to nominate candidates. But, I suppose as soon as somebody's on that ballot paper, then they could attract.
Historically, UKIP and the Brexit Party have all done, nowhere near as well as they do down south, but they do get votes. I mean, we had a UKIP MEP for a while. I mean, there are areas where there's pockets of. I mean, the northeast.
Could they actually take voters away from Labour?
No, I think they'll take voters away from the Tories.
Yeah, that's a given. But I'm asking whether or not, there are some people who were going to either vote Labour or, are unhappy with Starmer, that they may go.
I spoke to Reform's deputy chairman in Scotland the other week. It was quite a surprising interview because he was a lifelong SNP member who voted yes in 2014 and said he says that obviously they're going to take votes from the Tories. He says the number 2 party where they're picking up support is SNP voters, and it's this kind of there was this large minority of Scots who voted yes to independence and leave in 2016, and it's that consistent constituency where Reform are looking to pick up some support. Maybe the northeast in the sort of the fishing communities where there was a stronger vote to leave the European Union. Maybe also down in the south. Again, both sort of Tory areas. I know the Conservatives are concerned about Reform taking their votes.
I think it's interesting though with Reform because, say what you like about Nigel Farage, but he knows how to capitalise on a situation because we've got one poll which has put Reform slightly, was at 1 point ahead of the Tories, and he's demanding to be in the BBC debates, and now he's saying, we are going to be the opposition to Labour. he's just kind of shameless in that respect. I think, you know, he
Well, in the
knows-
debate, in the debate last night, Hannah, you know, when he was slagging off Labour's manifesto and was asked what his plan was, he basically said, "Well, we don't have one," and he's almost laughing about it. And you know, it's like, you know, here he goes again, bluffing. And
yeah,
I mean, in Scotland, we like to think that we could see through reform or we wouldn't vote for Farage. But as Ben says, you know, whether you like it or not, there are some people out there who would.
yeah. I mean, definitely.
It's a protest vote. It's a vote saying, I don't like the system. I don't like any of the established parties. So in a way, they don't need a manifesto because it's purely it's a vote against the status quo rather than for anything. That's my view of it anyway. I mean, it's kind of a wasted vote in that respect. But certainly, I wouldn't advise if you're an Express reader whose priority is seeing the SNP lose seats at this election, I wouldn't advise voting reform.
What about the Tories? They're continuing to attack Labour on their 18 secret tax rises. You know, is there any truth in what they are trying to claim, or is it just diversionary tactics again?
I think, I think that there are some truths in the sense that because Labour haven't ruled out certain things in their manifesto, then they are still potentially able to happen. Like, for example, the stuff about capital gains tax on people's homes. So Labour's the Tories are obviously using that, but then, you know, to say, oh, Labour is planning to hike up 18 different taxes secretly without you knowing about it, they know that the tax issue is something that, well, they must know that the tax issue is something that's really cutting through with voters and is actually getting through to people. So they're kind of amplifying that even more, because we obviously saw that with Rishi Sunak in that very first leaders debate where he came out with this thing about Labour are going to raise everyone's taxes by £2,000, and that you could see kind of that caught Keir Starmer off guard, and then that was denied by Labour, and obviously there was no problem with the Treasury saying, well, this has nothing to do with us, like, what are you talking about? Stop saying that it's a civil servant or, you know, civil service figure when it isn't. But clearly that said something to the Tories about, I think we can make some headway on this tax issue. So now they've come out with this claim about 18 secret taxes. And as I say, I think some of them have been challenged as not accurate by Labour, but some of them Labour haven't
answered. Yeah, exactly.
And I think was they're missing rather than they've. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the fact that the manifesto was kind of broadly, we'd heard everything in it before, there wasn't anything new. And as you say, it's the things that they didn't have in it that is allowing the Tories to attack and use that. And clearly, you know, their polling is showing that the tax issue is of huge importance to the voters. But I mean, again, you know, should they not be trying to shore up their own vote at the moment, rather than trying to
like, say, go after the reform territory rather than trying to swing people from Labour to them? Yes. I mean, what do you think, Ben?
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to the sort of standard theory of how you win elections is from the centre. So you've got Labour looking to sort of shuffle right slightly, and the Tories allowing reform to take this sort of this ground off to the right of the Tory party that perhaps a couple of years before Rishi Sunak got in, perhaps he's certainly taken the Tories a little bit left. So again, I think they're both sticking to the tried and trusted advice that you win elections by seizing the centre ground. Maybe as we get closer, the Tories might start to think, look, we're not going to win this. We just need to stop a huge majority. And the way to do that might be to go back to try and win some of these reform voters back. There's not a lot of time left. I mean, you know, you need someone like Nigel Farage, love him or loathe him, to change the polls like this in just a couple of weeks. I don't think there's anyone the Tories have got who could come in like a bombshell and really change things.
Not unless they pull Boris out the hat again to do a stunt.
I mean, I don't know at this point is bringing Boris Johnson back in actually help. I mean, this is the man who's associated with Partygate, of being one of the most, you know, odious characters in Downing Street, in the history of Downing Street. Shameful, you know, an embarrassment. And I bloody followed him around for 2 years. So I just don't know if bringing him back in. I think the charm's worn off Boris Johnson now. The charm was never there for people in Scotland, really. He was proven to not be popular. But even people in, you know, in parts of England, I think don't view him with such high regard anymore as they did a couple of years ago because of what we now know.
I think he's still cited. Obviously, when you see these vox pops being done, you know, by various outlets, it's interesting to me that his name is still mentioned. Either, you know, one side or the other, they absolutely loathe him or they love him.
Yeah,
and it's bizarre. But
well, it's interesting. Like, I was in, not that I have gone out on about this very much, but I was actually in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and Boris Johnson is the prime minister that the Americans would recognise the name of. Like, they don't know who Rishi Sunak is, they don't know Liz Truss, they don't know who David Cameron is, but as soon as you say Boris Johnson, they know it, they just know immediately, you know. So he has made that sort of impact, but I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but
no, I think that's the Trump effect, isn't it? And obviously, you know, it's that populist politics again. So sorry, Ben.
No, I was just going to say that. I mean, that is, I just don't think at this stage the optics of putting Boris Johnson at the front of the campaign is going to, as I've said before, I will defend him. I'll defend some of, I think his conduct in office was very poor, but I think his ideas and his sort of big thinking when he came in, there was something.
Hannah's shaking her head at you, Ben.
What is big thinking? Just got sort of ballooning around, doing nothing.
Well, again, without sort of wanting to keep harking on about it, that levelling up and.
But levelling up didn't happen. It was an.
It has. An awful lot of money's been distributed via the levelling up fund.
Is that
disproportionately to areas which are represented by Tories? I'm pretty sure.
I mean, the Tories are feeling out David Cameron, so it's not completely inconceivable that Boris could make a return. But is there anything now that the Tories could do? Because it appears it is, in terms of, you know, Labour's win, it could be absolutely historic.
I think we're into that stage now. The Tories need to minimise the scale of the defeat.
And how big do you think the defeat is going to be, Ben?
I mean, we're obviously seeing polls showing a huge victory and sort of electoral maps. I've seen a couple where you could actually drive. Someone was pointing out you could drive from the south coast of England to the Scottish border without seeing without passing through a Conservative constituency. And ironically, you then hit the blue wall across the borders in Dumfries and Galloway. So
if that holds.
If that holds, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it could be historic. I think what perhaps some people at Conservative HQ are starting to think, right, how do we keep this to within 100, 120 seats, something like that, rather than 200 plus.
I think though, actually,
no idea.
Sorry, I was just going to say the fact that there's now this talk of a Labour super majority. Actually, the Tories could maybe use that in their favour and say, look, don't, and you can see that already actually with Rishi Sunak saying, basically, if you vote for even reform, never mind if you vote for Labour, if you vote for reform, you're giving Labour a blank check. You're essentially giving them that super majority, so that I think is actually quite a clever tactic, because they're saying, okay, we get it, we're not going to win, but don't give Labour this super majority, actually vote for us and you'll have retain some control. I think that is what they're doing now.
It's a tough sell though, isn't it? Vote for us and we'll be a strong opposition.
It doesn't. I don't think it's really going to fly, is it? I mean, if the turnout is lower, but they get this huge majority, then I'm not sure that the Tories saying we will hold them to account is going to work after their record, is it?
Was there? Well, I don't know if it was actually on one of these podcasts. Someone said that the scale of the victory could be that the Labour co-op group, so the co-op MPs would actually be the second biggest block at Westminster. So the sort of the left of the party might end up being the biggest second grouping. I don't know. It's such a tricky one for I don't want to speak for Express readers, but for people who perhaps might have differing priorities. They are sick of the SNP and want to see the SNP lose MPs. I mean, we definitely, I think I can speak for Express readers when I say we definitely don't want the SNP to win the most MPs in Scotland, because then that gives us a mandate for another referendum question suddenly comes back out of nowhere. But on the other hand, you don't want to contribute to a supermajority by there being 30 odd Scottish Labour MPs propping up a huge Labour majority.
I think that would be great. Fabulous.
Hannah's always going to disagree with you, Ben.
I know.
But let's talk about something that, if nobody's seen these pictures, and we can actually describe them. But obviously, Scotland's politicians and the great and the good are heading to Germany, are in Germany at the moment for the Euros. And we've seen some hilarious pictures of John Swinney, of Stephen Flynn, and Gordon Robertson, Angus Robertson rather, Angus Robertson, and Alex Salmond, of course,
and Tasmania.
I mean, this is the thing. We've got, do politicians and football mix? I mean, is this going to make people want to vote for them? I mean, Swinney's getting the selfies in at the moment.
After Nicola Sturgeon there.
Well, it would have been interesting if Sturgeon would have been there. But, are they on the gravy train, or is it, are they genuine football fans, and is it a good thing? Will it get them more votes, or could it annoy some people?
I'm very uncomfortable with it all, I have to say.
Why?
Because I think it's all about votes. I think they are. I don't think John Swinney's a genuine football fan.
But why do you say that?
I don't think Angus Robert. Well, because I just from covering politics, I've never you tend to find out who is a fan. I mean, Salmon, we know, is a big Hearts fan. We know Salmon's a football fan. We know Stephen Flynn.
Yeah.
We know Stephen
Flynn
Flynn's a football
is.
fan.
Who says who's allowed to be a true football fan and who isn't? Like, for example, I am not a big football fan. My colleague John Ferguson will probably kill me for saying this, but he is not interested in football. But yet tonight we would watch something like the Euros because it's a totally different thing when your country is playing. It's not just like a Old Firm match,
No, but this is. I just think it's a cynical way to try and win votes, and by posing as he's taking advantage of the fact that the Tartan Army are generally quite a friendly bunch, and they've probably all had a few drinks, and someone relatively famous turns up. About half of them don't even know who John Swinney is, but there's cameramen photographers following him around. And so, pose with this guy. I
think the question is, Ben, as well,
popularity without him actually doing anything.
But that's the question, so should they be there during an election? I mean, Stephen Flynn is a huge football fan.
Yeah.
And that's very genuine. You can obviously tell that. But he is facing losing his seat. And there is that argument of, I think he's said on record that he won't be going to the rest of the games that he was planning to go to had the election not been called. But, should he be there? Swinney, you can argue, he's the First Minister of Scotland. He should be there. I mean, to be fair to the pair of them, they're definitely dressed more appropriately than some of the others.
The First Minister of Scotland be there? It's a football match.
Because it's a football match, but and it's been 26 years, Ben. And, whoever was First Minister probably would have been there to represent Scotland.
Because it would have been 98, so it was pre-devolution.
Yeah. That's sorry.
I think it's interesting you're saying about Stephen Flynn, because right now he's not actually being paid, I don't think, by the taxpayer.
No, I'm not. I've not got a problem with Flynn because I think he was going as a fan, and he's just ended up in the pictures. John Swinney is going courtesy of the taxpayer, and it's boosting the SNP's election campaign. But Alex Salmond is there, and it's obviously boosting his profile as well.
But as Ben says, he's a genuine football fan as well.
Yeah, but see,
is Angus Robertson a football fan?
A genuine football fan or not? It's not like it's a religion.
No, but there are some politicians.
So I'm gonna hazard a guess that Stephen Flynn's paying his own tickets.
That'll be Angus Robertson phoning you.
Saying, I am a big football fan. Maybe he's supporting Germany, is he not? Half German?
Well, he's half German, so yeah, but that's
by the looks of his outfit.
He's wearing half a Bavarian.
Which half is German?
Underneath and
the bottom half.
The bottom.
I would say Alex. So Alba probably paying for Salmon to be there.
Well, I wouldn't
Flynn
be so
probably paid his own tickets,
that.
and yet we're paying for John Swinney and Angus Robertson to go.
You're just annoyed because you're not going, Ben. That's it, isn't it?
Yes, well, slightly.
I think Swinney. I think a lot of people would think that it's fine for Swinney to be there, but
I think it's fine for Swinney.
Air Miles Angus.
I think it's fine for Angus Robertson. He's the whatever he is, cultural attaché or whatever his job title is, But I do think that somebody who is seeking election to Westminster, yes, it's their prerogative if they want to go, but I don't really see how I'm just not entirely sure how going to that boosts I don't know why going to a Scotland game, if you're an SNP, MP, people already know that you love Scotland, right? You're like a nationalist. So I don't see how any voter would look at a picture of you with the Tartan Army and go, "Oh, I'm actually going to vote for him now."
I think there is a sense. I think there is a sense of pride. I think there is part of the electorate who would look at, you know, these politicians and think, well, you know, they're there as football fans, and you know, they're representing Scotland. And I mean, you know, there's about 100,000 plus of the Tartan Army, you know, there, and people are loving seeing the pictures at the moment. They're loving watching the videos. So, and the exposure is enormous.
I also think there is this sense of politician does normal people thing. You know, it's always going to look good. It's always going to be good for them to be seen to be a normal human being instead of the politician. You know, so I think from that perspective, it is quite good for their profiles. But whether we should be paying for that or not
is the question.
Whether we should be paying for it, and I kind of feel like I wish the Scotland fans would be a bit more cynical. I think
they're full of
those
hope,
guys in Marion Flats are being used a bit. There's a proud tradition in football of booing politicians, whoever they are, and being
sure
very
Douglas
sort of
Ross knows all about
anti-establishment. And I always get a bit uncomfortable seeing politicians mingling with football fans. That, you know, they should be getting, no matter what your political affiliations, you should. If you're a football fan and a politician poses with his arm around you, you're being used to boost his profile. And I don't think fans should stand for it, personally.
I think there'll be a lot of fans who probably won't remember posing with John Swinney or Stephen Flynn today. Well, listen, thanks very much to pair of you. We will. This will be back on Monday. Thanks. Bye.
It's important we look at the facts. Politics has to be about service.
A modern form of national service.
The outcome, that's for the voters to decide.